All the time, the business environment continues to morph. Geopolitical tensions, technology changes, health challenges, and climate change contribute to leadership challenges. So business success and failure. The most recent challenge, which has impacted all of us, is COVID-19 pandemic. And from this has emerged the rise of hybrid work environments, reduced business travel, and remote meetings, which all present new leadership challenges. In July last year, Forbes published a piece titled "The Top 3 Leadership Skills Needed Post-Pandemic." Excuse me. These were: leaders must build strong and cohesive teams, even with employees working remotely. Leaders must navigate and manage change quickly and appropriately while remaining focused on the more significant task at hand. Leaders must remain culturally sensitive and emotionally aware with fast-moving, complex work environments. In the next 45 minutes, you will hear from Anthony Willoughby, who is in London, Doutzen Griffhoff, an adventurer, coach and business consultant who resides in Kigali, Rwanda, Stephen Brown, a British entrepreneur currently in Sydney, and Nola Turner-Jensen, a Wiradjuri woman author and cultural brain switch expert who resides in Brisbane. In that short time, much information is going to come your way, information that may challenge your way of thinking around leadership. I encourage you to take notes and keep an open mind. Our first key speaker this morning is Anthony Willoughby. Anthony is a career adventurer, and for more than 40 years, he has spent time immersing himself in some of the most ancient cultures in the world. He has been establishing the patterns and links with the effective leadership facilitated in these cultures, resulting in them thriving for tens of thousands of years. I have known Anthony for 20 years as a friend and a business consultant. His passion is infectious and his fieldwork and approach are compelling. I've used his leadership and mapping programs to develop leaders and strategy in multiple businesses, cultures and countries. The results have been tangible for each of the businesses and engaging for key members of my team. Anthony, over to you.
Craig, and ladies and gentlemen, Nola, thank you all very, very much for inviting me into your community and listening to the future of leadership. And I'd love to just show you some slides, if I might, of why I think there is maybe a different way of looking at things, and then Doutzen will explain really how we're bringing this and making it alive. But if I could really begin, as I say, these are some of my own stories and how these ideas have evolved. And it's really evolved from being with nomads and with other people in Mongolia. And what I absolutely love is that what they have are really ancient solutions. And everything is around the courage, the clarity. And as you see that photograph there, I'm lying right in front of those horses. And that's how close the horses got to me. So I might be 70, but I'm still out there. And next year I'm on a 71-day odyssey in Western Mongolia, if you want to join me. And these experiences and what I talk about have not evolved from any academics. They have evolved from people being kind enough to welcome me into their communities, whether it's in Kenya or it's joining Mongolians on their migrations from winter to spring pastures. It's looking really at this timelessness and seeing how they adapt to challenges and what is the wisdom that we have ourselves lost, that inability to make the decision. They know how to make these decisions. And for 40 years, I've been on this odyssey to bring their wisdom to a wider audience, whether it is in Japan or England, bringing Eriko Lekasana to help people start looking at their territory and how do they make those decisions. But I think most of all, what I'm trying to bring across is the humility and the humanity of people, where arrogance does not exist, where it is around the community that people are looking for. And the other part of my life and my business is helping people put that record button on, of life on, because I think we need to realize that life is a superb and wonderful adventure. And there's Stephen Brown, who will be speaking to you in Africa. Just to give an idea, these might sound fairly mad, but these are some of the companies we've worked with. And more recently, we're working with a number of different educational establishments, but very excited about a new way of looking at things, the fundamentals of humanity and being human. I'm 8th generation expatriate. I was brought up in the Sudan and in Egypt, went to a traditional boarding school in England. And at the age of 22, I took a one-way ticket in search of adventure and ambitions to Japan. Those sense of adventure is still going. I lived there for 30 years, opened the first outdoor team building company, went off to Beijing in 75, hitchhiked across Australia from Perth to Sydney with a big sign saying, "Tourist pommy bastard needs ride," hitched the Silk Road 2,000 miles along there. And I had a job, I assure you, at the time, but it's always been this sense of curiosity and what's possible. And it was on a 22-day camel safari in northern Kenya when I first saw the Maasai. And what I saw there were people who had absolute substance without any arrogance. And I realized my entire education was, how could you be massively arrogant with zero substance? And at my school, they actually taught effortless insincerity to go with it. But I thought, what is it that we've lost? And that's when I then decided to go to Papua New Guinea. So I met the Papua New Guinea ambassador in Tokyo. And he simply said, would you like to go to my village? So I said, God, I'd love to. So there I am in the highlands of Papua New Guinea, where they still have feathers and they were still running around with bones in their noses. But I asked them, I said, why do you have so many feathers? They say, well, because a big man has many feathers. A bigger man can hand out his feathers. And I asked them about the spear. They said, you can't buy it, you can't sell it, you can't give it away. And I started to think about the people I knew in Tokyo. And I could ask you, do you know who gives away their feathers? Do you know those who don't? Do you know those who've earned the spear? Do you know those who've tried to buy it? What have people earned? Because I think this is inherent in all of us. And whether we're in Africa or running a boardroom, I think we need to know how we earn that spear. And when I got back to Tokyo, I asked the ambassador, what is the most important thing in your life? And he looked at me and he said, it is my territory. And therefore I know my duty and I know my aims and ambitions. And I started to think, what was my territory? A couple of bars where people vaguely knew me. So I started to go off on a series of different journeys, crossing deserts, going across Papua New Guinea. And then someone invited me to climb a 7,500 meter mountain, the same height as Everest North Col, the death zone, without porters and oxygen. And I realized that I needed to train myself. So I went off to climb Kilimanjaro, Mount Kenya, and eventually climbed in the Ruwenzori in between Zaire and Uganda. And we got to the top of these mountains. And I thought, wow, if I can get to the top of these mountains, what can anybody else do? So I decided to open the very first outdoor team building center in Japan. At that time, I was told I was completely mad, and I called it I Will Not Complain, because complainers destroy morale. But I wanted to unlock trust and willpower. And from Japan, I was then able to get a training center on the Great Wall of China back in 1994. And we were on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, the Financial Times, and this was big, getting people to trust each other. We even did team building for Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. But what I started to see was that it was very easy to build a team. Teamwork is easy. But people said, where do I fit in? Where do I belong? Where am I recognized? And I thought back to every time in an indigenous community, they had clarity, they had purpose. And what I realized, indigenous people, they had a map. And that made me really start to think, could employees, do they understand their map? And that is something I've been working on for the last 30 years. Because what I've discovered for any indigenous person is they know the farming area, the hunting area, and the fishing area. But you can give anybody a blank sheet of paper and you can ask them exactly the same questions about where is their hunting area, where is your farming area? How do you personally see that? And then people will draw you a map. And this happens to be Thomson Reuters. And once everybody's got a map, they can understand what is actually going on. So just with the paper, you can start to get people to talk about what is important. And this is Stephen Brown, who you'll be meeting, who's been using this to build his businesses. But once people can say, this is where I am and this is where I want to go, you're unleashing their emotional perceptions and their ideas. And ultimately, you can start to co-create a journey of where people are going. And by doing that, you're building trust, you're building identity, because people are talking about things in metaphors. The trouble is, in so many organizations, the chairman says everything is fantastic. God, I'm successful. I'm absolutely brilliant. But when you actually ask the next level of managers, what do they see? Bullshit bridge, fantasy applications, IT island, and everything else. And this is so much that what people see. And this is what is happening more and more with COVID, is people are worried. And I'd just like to show you, here is Craig working with his teams, because what it allows is for the executive to explain their vision. But more importantly, it lets everybody explain how they see things and how they can actually deliver it. And this happens to be one of the world's largest market research companies. They had a plan for going forward. But every map that people drew as to how they saw it was totally and utterly different. And this is, I believe, the challenge, because you need to get to the emotional perceptions and let people talk to each other about what the solutions are, so people can work on this together to create one map. And my belief is one day every organization and individual will have that map. Because whether it's Moët Hennessy or the research company, everybody's got a different way of how they see things. But by bringing those different ways together, it's possible to create a plan. So really, it is, how do we get people to explain to each other their fears, their hopes, and their emotional perceptions that I don't believe any amount of words can get together. So whether we're running it on the Great Wall of China for, this is Omnicom Group, once people can understand where they are, what they're hunting, then you can create a business plan, and that can be in Japanese, Chinese, any language. Everybody will then understand it. And whether you're in Africa or in Japan, people understand each other's perceptions, because this has been around, I think, since time began, is the ability to have context for conversation. And that is what I think we've lost. So whether you're working, this is working, obviously, as you saw with Bill Gates on our teamwork on the Great Wall. We then actually worked with the Gates Foundation. And what they said in China, we're in China at the moment, why don't we come up with a project that is so big and so exciting that we can work with Seattle and work with the Chinese government to raise Africa? What would be a plan that is so big that we can really inspire people? And this map created, why don't we mobilize resources from China for global polio eradication? That idea came off that map. But what it seems now today, that a map is not really enough, because the maps have changed. This is pre-COVID, exactly a year and 2 months ago. This is looking at the market of education, everybody fighting each other, nobody wanting to come across to new opportunities. Already 2 months later, you started to get Ofsted. All of the old restrictions are breaking down. Hope, there's new belief, there's new ways of teaching. And now what you've got is here, this is a month ago, the leadership, the governance, the teaching, everything has changed. And to be honest, I absolutely think, COVID is a phenomenal opportunity, because structure, stability, security, certainty are proven to be the delusions of, an ill-informed mind. And that's why I believe we need a map. We need to be able to communicate to each other. What are our hopes and our fears as a community? Because since time began, how do we build communities? So what I believe is the next leaders are those who can create trust and build those communities to help transform around a common plan. But I think we need a map that is ancient. And this is what I've been working on with Nola, with Emmanuel, with other people, indigenous people. And it's to come up really with what we call the trust wheel, the common unity. What are the different balances that we need to be a successful human being? And at the center of it is a trust of ourselves. And really, what is the community that we want? How do we create that community? And that's why we ask the leaders, what is the community they want to be proud of? What do they want people to feel that they have that identity? So we start with getting people to think about what is their territory, their wealth, and their threats. And only once you can agree that do you have the context to really talk about growth. And is the growth coming from hunting new ideas or farming what you have? And are you going to hand out your feathers? What are you going to share as a leader to create that community? And then really from that, we can then start to look at what is the next stage of that, which is around the idea of really we have a number of templates to start to look at what is the migration plan that people are going to go on? Where is your organization going to migrate? And then how do you create that invisible leadership, leading by example, the humility of authority and courage? And what are the projects that are really going to create that in the organization? And then how are we then going to get people to think collective first? And this is Nola who gave me this idea. We have to start thinking about our identity and our purpose and focusing on building a community around the values and respect. So this is really what we've created, is using the indigenous ways. This has been around for thousands of years, and we believe that it is really, really applicable to any organization. So thank you so much for listening to my presentation and talking about it. But thank you very much. And what I'd now like to do is to ask Rita Doubtson to talk about how, with her background, we've managed to craft this to really being transformational for organizations, especially now. But Doubtson, as we met in an airport in Tokyo 6 years ago, and it's over to you. Thank you so much. And thank you everybody very, very much for listening.
Thank you, Anthony. I'll take over here. Thank you.